Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Hobbyists Now, your one stop shop.
For everything nerdy and dirty.
That's right. That's right. I'm Claudian. This is Nick, my homie G Dog. And just don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you like what you see and hear. Also, please leave a comment. We would love to hear from you.
We are on Spotify as well. There's a link in the description.
We're going to start off the show with some news. Nick, what do you got?
Disney has launched the second of 6 collectibles in their Infinity Saga Relics series, each with an Infinity Stone that will fit into the Iron Man Nano Gauntlet. That will be released October 19th. The lineup continues today with Loki's Scepter and will continue with the Aether Container and the Orb, Eye of Agamotto, in the coming weeks. Loki's Scepter replica includes a light up Mind Stone and special packaging. It's available to order at Shop Disney for about $119. The Tesseract replica includes a light up Space Stone, and you can pick it up at Shop Disney also for $99. You'll need to collect the entire series, unfortunately, to get all the Infinity Stones for the Nano Gauntlet. But if you don't like the sound of that, they have the Hasbro wearable Marvel Nano Gauntlet replica at GameStop for about $100. So there is actually a cheaper option out there for you if that's what you want. And it has literally all the same features, lights up and all that stuff. Claudian, want to give us some info on in your area of expertise?
Yeah. Yeah. So my area of expertise, for those who may or may not know, is Star Wars. Love it. And yeah, we got some news from Hasbro. They have actually just launched a surprised Black Series 3-pack based on the events of Star Wars: The Mandalorian Season 2. It will feature The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and Gogru together in a single set that you can pre-order exclusively on Amazon for about $67, with the release date set for January the 1st. Star Wars fans and collectors can imagine scenes from Star Wars Galaxy with this premium 6-inch scale, the Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and Gogru figures inspired by the characters in the Star Wars The Mandalorian series. Fans and collectors can display these fully articulated figures featuring premium details and multiple points of articulation in their collection. This Star Wars The Black Series 3-pack comes with 3 figures and 5 entertainment-inspired accessories. All right, well, we touched base on my favorite thing. Now we're going to go to Nick's favorite. What do you got for us?
I'm gonna move on to my favorite spot, the figures. So they have some really cool ones coming out in October of this year. They have a Mega House Variable Action Collector Heroes DX Naruto Shippuden Kakashi. He will run you about $97 American, €98, 146 Australian, and about 130 Canadian. He's kind of pricey, but he'll be over here, so you can kind of get an idea of what he at least looks like. Fantastic looking, very well put together, multiple points of articulation. It comes with quite a few different little props. He will, in my opinion, be definitely worth the price. And then we move on to another little less well-known thing, but still near and dear to me. They used to have a card game for it. Bandai Spirits Figure Arts Zatch Bell. He's a much smaller figure. You can tell based off of the price. He comes with all of his different faces. So basic figure art stuff, new faces, hands, a couple of his items or props, whatever you want to call them. He'll run you about 36 US, €37, 55 Australian, about 49 Canadian. So yeah, would definitely look out for him. Then one of my favorite shows. Actually, we just watched not that long ago.
Hmm.
Bandai Spirit's Figure Arts, Anya Forger from Spy X Family. Uh, she will run you about $31 US, 32 euro, 47 Australian, and about 42 Canadian.
Yeah, I love that show.
Oh my god, I do.
It's really good.
So moving back over to Claudian for some more Disney news.
Yeah. So, surprising news actually. Dynamic Entertainment, the comic book company, just announced their creative team for their version of a very well beloved Disney animated series, one that I'm sure many people will know, Gargoyles. The characters who were featured in the cartoon and the comics in the mid 80s are returning to comics this December to kick off the holiday season. Releasing with its first issue December 7th, several new characters will be making their first ever appearance in this series. That sounds pretty exciting. I can't wait for that one.
Well, yeah, too, and you can also catch the old show actually on Disney Plus right now.
Yep.
So at least you have that.
Yeah, it's currently on Disney Plus, so I might have to actually check that out. So
Relive our childhood.
yeah, yeah. Sega's also news. Sega's long running Yakuza franchise will be going through kind of a name change for North America, according to reporting by Kotaku. All future entries will now go by the name of Like a Dragon. The most recently released game in the series was in 2020's Yakuza Like a Dragon. So the name change should be pretty easy one for most gamers to adjust to. Ryoga Gachika is the name of the series in Japan, which also translates to Like a Dragon. Sega confirmed to Kotaku that the move is intended to more closely align with the Japanese name. The change will effectively begin starting with a recently announced Like a Dragon Ishin. I know this game you're really stoked for, Nick.
Oh yeah.
That we're going to talk about. You wanna talk about this?
Oh yeah, happily. So they'll obviously be releasing the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which seems to be pretty interesting for the most part. There's quite a bit of information. The beta, I believe, as of right now, is currently running. I haven't heard anything great or bad about it. But again, not anything great. It looks like it'll be running with all the same stuff, new maps, some old maps from the original one, all the same stuff you love and know. It looks like it'll be running for the Vault Edition about $99, or for the cross-gen bundle about $70. So pretty hefty price tag is attached to this. Hopefully they give us more than they gave us the last time. But again, unfortunately, only time will tell until the release date. So for this, I'm going to pass it on over to Claudian and let him give us our last little bit of news.
Yeah, so for those fans of Dragon Ball, like myself, and I know you are too, um, yeah, I I don't know why this is more funny than it needs to be, but it's funny. Anyways, so Dragon Ball The Breakers is the game we're talking about. Is a 1-on-7 online asymmetrical action game in which a band of several everyday humans tries to survive the raiders. Ooh, that should be interesting. Caught in a unexpected temporal phenomenon. I hate when those happen, you know.
Stuck.
Several ordinary citizens find themselves stranded in a temporal seam. They share their imprisonment with the Raider, a menacing enemy from another timeline with an overwhelming power. I wonder if they're going to go Super Saiyan. Their only hope for survival is to break out from the temporal seam with the super time machine. But the Raider is on their tracks and becomes stronger minute by minute. In a race against time, the cunning of the survivors clash with the power of the raiders to break free or be broken. The game is in fact coming around the corner on October 14th. Cheer.
Actually, so for those who don't know, this game is actually extremely similar to that of Dead by Daylight. Instead of the killers, well, I mean, I guess they're still killers, but you'll have Frieza, Boo, and Cell. As far as we know, there could be more. I'm assuming there will be more, but just a little bit of information. Back to you, Claudian.
Yeah, and actually, to in fact close out the news segment, just a bit of news. One last bit. Jeff Goldman, who many people who follow development and stuff, and for those who watch or play the game Overwatch, will know his work. He developed characters like Tracer, Mercy, and Devi. Is actually no longer working at Activision Blizzard. He was actually tasked to be on the new Overwatch 2. So Goldman made a decision to leave Blizzard earlier this year. A Blizzard spokesman said to the press. Not a lot of news on what the circumstances were, but we're pretty hardcore game guys here, and anytime main developer, especially really the cornerstone of developer like leaves like that, it's always usually, I don't know.
It's a bad omen.
It's a bad omen, yeah. So who knows? Maybe more news will come out. Maybe he just wants to do something different. But yeah, so that concludes our news. All right, so now we're going to move to our main topic for tonight. That topic is something that's true and dear to my heart. That is the video game that we got in front of here for those that are watching us. Like Xenogears. This game is my childhood. I understand this is Nick. This is your first time playing it. Just got into it just a little bit. It's I can't blame anybody. This game is an 80-hour game. It's a very long game. But yeah, no. Tonight we're going to talk about Xenogears. I'm pretty excited. It's a game, like I said, I love, and researching has been pretty interesting. So learned a lot about it over these few days. So yeah. Xenogears was released in 1998. It is a technically now it's a Japanese role-playing game, developed and published by Square. This is before the merger, so they were just Square at the time, for the PlayStation. It is the first entry in the much now larger Xeno franchise. The gameplay of Xenogears revolves around navigating 3D environments, both on foot and using humanoid mech dubbed gears for this game. Combat is governed by a version of turn-based active time battle system. The story follows our protagonist, Faye, several others as they journey across the world to overthrow an all-powerful rule of Solaris and uncover the mysteries concerning their world. The story incorporates Carl Jung's psychology, Freudism, thoughts, and religious symbolism. Nick, you want to talk a little bit about the creators a bit?
Yeah. So this was created by Takahashi and his wife Kaori Tanaka, aka Soria Saga, and as a proposal for Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, actually, Nick, did you know that this game was considered too dark to be the next Final Fantasy from Final Fantasy VI? Because these were the team that was behind Final Fantasy VI. Could you believe that?
It's actually surprising considering how, at least in my opinion, Final Fantasy VII was super dark. I mean, it dealt with mental illness and, unaliving yourself.
Yes.
Like, the whole thing was very dark. in tone. So
But you get to kill God in this game. That's so. I mean, that's pretty dark, bro.
I mean, to
Like,
be fair though, they do deal with something similar in Final Fantasy VII because Sephiroth almost literally
yeah,
Genova
Jonova, yeah.
with Jehovah. So
Which
I
is
mean,
funny because Jehovah's in this too.
yeah,
But they actually changed it. We'll talk about that later. But they, or if we remember, touch on it. But they actually changed it from Jehovah to Dias because we'll get into the translation segment. But yeah, I just thought it'd be a little interesting tidbit for those who didn't know. This is what's going to originally be the new Final Fantasy at the time.
man, that's nuts.
Yeah.
It was actually allowed to be created as its own sequel to Chrono Trigger, and then as an original science fiction premise, it was developed under a working title, Project Noah. The characters were designed by Tanaka, while the gears were designed by actual people who worked on some of the Final Fantasy games. Six, actually, you were just
Yep.
mentioning before we started recording the one scene from Six where they're walking through the snow. So, in their mechs. So, the guys' names are Junyun Ishigaki and Yoshinori Ogura. The designs were portrayed during in-game cinematics through anime cutscenes due to the time constraints and the team's general inexperience. The second half of the game's plot was actually told through the second disc of this game. So, Claudian, you picked this up for me.
Yeah. Well, first thing, just want to mention this game actually has a connection to something that we hold dear and true, and that's Gundam. The mech designs are actually very Gundam-esque. Takahashi actually brought Gundam toy model kits that we ourselves have built, like not ours particularly, but just into Gunpla or that we are into, and actually use those as basis for the gears. And yeah, so the second the second disc is notorious in this game. It's due to budgetary issues. They essentially the second disc is only them sitting in a chair, floating in like essentially space, with a spotlight in them, like Faye and Ellie, the other main character, and they're kind of like reminiscing about what happened. And you do a little bit of like maneuvering. It's just a lot of text scrolling. Square at the time, for those who may not know, also had a mandatory 2 years to do a game. That was it. So whatever game you were doing, you had to get it done in 2 years. So talk about time crunch. They lived it. They were the original time crunchers. So the game was almost not localized due to religious content. We were just talking about that. Its localization was handled by Square Electric Arts staff and the great Richard Honeywood. Talk about a name. Who described it as one of the most troublesome games of his career. In fact, this game is so pivotal to how Square from that point on would translate games, because of Honeywood saying, I'm not going to do it this way anymore. This is crap. You guys got to get your act together. This isn't going to get done. So this game actually propelled that localization to being more of a respectable thing. Because most Japanese people are surprised when an American speaks Japanese. So, like, they don't even believe it. So, yeah, English language is not their top priority for sure. Xenogears received critical acclaim, with many of it calling it a work of art due to the heavy religious themes and elements of Carl Jung's psychology. Praises particularly went toward the storyline, gameplay, characters, psychological, and religious themes, but received criticism from the rush pace of the second disc. I was just mentioning that as well, due to the lack of gameplay and excessive narration. Nick, you had a bit of fun with reading that opening text crawl, huh?
Yes. It was like 5 minutes of just exposition, which is not bad, but you
Yeah.
can't even skip it. If you hit
You
start,
can't.
it just pauses.
Yep. And it crawls. It's real slow, so it really lets you take its time. By 2003, the game had shipped 1.2 million copies worldwide, gaining it a cult following. While a direct sequel has not been developed, Takahashi would later form Monolith Soft and develop the Xenosaga trilogy and the Xenoblade Chronicles, which I have played on Nintendo Switch games as a spiritual successor. Xenogears combines traditional role-playing game structures such as Square's signature active time battle system with a new feature, particularly in the game's martial arts combo style. It features two slightly different battle systems. In the first, the player controls human characters in turn-based combat, manipulated through sequences that you learn and their combos. So, for example, the first one is like, I think it's like square, 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 square X, and then like the second one's like square, square, X, and then you start going to, no, I'm sorry, it's like triangle, 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 X, triangle, triangle, X, and then at some point you start using your squares. You can also, as you battle, you basically have a gauge, and that gauge eventually allows you to do more combos. And it gives it an exciting thing. The fight animations are beautiful. They're very, very chef's kiss, you know, like I thought. I mean, I think still. I mean, it's an old game, but whatever. That's what I think. And then the second, making use of gears, introduces different sets of statistics and abilities for each character. Xenogears features both traditional anime and pre-rendered CGI movie clips by Production IG to illustrate important plot points. Now, the opening cutscene, which I'm sure was confusing as hell for a lot of, like, for anybody really, because you had no idea what was going on, is not the kind of cutscene that is in the rest of the game. The rest of the game is, I think you best describe the art style.
Yeah, it's
Like,
it's definitely early, or not early, but 90s
yeah.
anime style, more akin to like if you've seen it before, Tenchi Muyo and stuff like that. The pointed noses, the
Yeah.
even the like styling for them, it's very similar.
Yeah.
It's actually quite beautiful. I mean, honestly, just playing the game alone, just to watch that, like if they made an anime of this, I would watch it.
Yeah, yeah. And I know when we began this, before we began this recording, you were like, I think this game's got religious tones, because you're like, doesn't it just open with like a religious thing? Like, but yeah, it opens up with, the game literally opens up with, Omega, Alpha and Omega. Yeah, that famous biblical thing. It's very biblical. This game, and like mentioned earlier, it did get a lot of backlash from it, especially with conservatives. But you know, it's now a trope nowadays. Like, in anime or anything, oh yeah, it's gonna kill Jehovah. Like, you know, but back then it was, you know,
Yeah,
it wasn't accepted.
No,
It wasn't
not at all.
accepted. But yeah, and the cutscenes are phenomenal. They're according to we have the game here. There's over 20 minutes of stunning hand-drawn anime that tells this complex, futuristic tale. So, according to the actual game box here, there's about 20 minutes of actual anime, like, except for the opening sequence, which I guarantee you they're also describing. So, yeah. So, Nick, you want to pick up where we?
Yeah, for sure. The player advances the protagonist and his companions through a three-dimensional fictional world with visible cities, geographical sites, and other locations spread out across several continents. Some locations exist not on the original map, but in the sky. At first, partly the party travels on foot, but can eventually use a variety of vehicles, including their gears and a sand sub called Yggdrasil,
Yes,
which again
it's a tree.
so you're getting Nordic stuff.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, you get a little bit of everything.
Well, I mean, Bart. I guess Bart knows how to name his submarines. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Xenogears initially takes place on Ignis, the largest continent of the Xenogears world, and a site of a century-long war between nations, Evea and Kinslev. A church-like organization known as Ethos has excavated Gears' giant robot suits for the preservation of the world's culture. Although Kinslev originally had the upper hand in the war, the mysterious army known as Gebler appeared and began to assist Evea, and Gebler's help. With Gebler's help, Avea military recovered its losses and began making its way to Kinslev territory. As the story unfolds, the setting broadens to encompass the entire world and the two floating countries, Shevat and Solaris. Solaris, ruled by Emperor Cain, and the AI collective known as the Gazelle Ministry, commands the Gebler army and the Ethos, and secretly uses both to dominate the land dwellers. Shevat has the only country to, or is the only country to evade the control of Solaris.
Yeah. So this game's got a lot of Judaism, a lot of Christian, ideology, and then of course a lot of German names are just sprout across this. Like for example, your phase gear that you acquire in the game gets essentially, everybody calls it
I even said it wrong the first time.
Yeah.
They call it Weltall.
they would call it Weltos, but it's actually Voltos, which is like German.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting the thought that they both went through developing the game. It's really amazing. So yeah, much of the Xenogears plot and backstory is detailed in Xenogears Perfect Works. I think you and I were looking up the prices of what they go for, like about $200 on eBay now. So yeah, produced by DigiQ. It details the history of Xenogears universe from the discovery of Zophar to the start of the game. According to the Perfect Works schematic, as well as the game's ending credits, Xenogears is in fact the 5th episode in a series of 6, with the events spanning multiple millennia. Another thing I wanted to talk quickly about is so we've been mentioning that the game's in 3D, right? And you know this, like, it's like the most interesting concept. It's 3D, but your characters are still 2D sprites, right? So like, you could turn the camera 360 around your character, and you can see the back of their head, the side, front. It's adorable. It's definitely the only game I've ever experienced like that. Like, especially for like this kind, like at the time. I wanna correct myself, at the time, and yeah. Now, the gear in battle, and this is including in battle sequences too. Same thing, 3D but 2D sprites. But the gears are in fact 3D though, so that's kind of the only 3D caveat that changes it up. But yeah, and then you don't ever really have a map in the game. It's just the compass in the game, and that's about it until you get into the world map. But yeah, so now we're going to move toward the development part of this game. All right, so yeah, so we are now going to move to development. So development took approximately 2 years, going back to that 2 year rule, and it included a staff of 30 developers. Um, Beginning planning and creation of the backstory extended to, in fact, extended to several years before that. The word Xeno had been decided between staff from an early stage when it means being something strange or alien, uh, like xenophobic, I guess. Gears was chosen from multiple suggested words. The game's gears were not present during the early stages, with their places being filled by traditional summons monsters. I think because Final Fantasy got summons, so that kind of seems pretty fair. Like as far as that makes perfect sense to me. The game's use of anime cutscenes was chosen as it was difficult to properly recreate Takanaki's uh, gear artwork into 3D CGI. The game's engine was also designed to be best suited for 3D map displays and battle arenas. Takahashi had wanted to create a game, in fact, in full 3D, but here comes the PlayStation's capabilities meant that this could not be managed. That's where we're going back to the 2D sprites, resulting in the current mesh of 2D sprites against 3D backgrounds. The theme and stories were greatly influenced by the works and philosophies of Friedrich Nietzsche, Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, as well as dystopian science fiction films such as THX 1138. In fact, that was directed by George Lucas. It was a student film. And Soylent Greens. It's people. It's people. So sorry, I just ruined that for you guys. But yeah, and according to Takanaki, the reason for the correlation was simply due to common interests with her husband. According to her, the story revolved around where do we come from, what are we, and where are we going. Kind of like, I know you started the game and the opening with I am Alpha and Omega, kind of like that. Again, very very heavy handed, but that's kind of the nature of this game. So there was a large portion of story and artwork that did not make it into the final game. Kind of curious what that would have been like. The game's second disc consists mainly of narration from Faye and Ellie, which I mentioned earlier as well, of events following the party's escape from Solaris. Well, it was popularly assumed to be due to budget constraints. Takahashi later revealed the full reason, as his team was inexperienced. They were unable to create an entire proposed game in the expected 2 year development time. So instead of ending prematurely with the end of the first disc, Takahashi offered a compromise, which became the second disc content, allowing the staff to finish the game within time and budget deadlines. Because that makes sense, right? Like, you don't want to, because they were so passionate about it. I know they probably wanted to tell it as much as they could, and that's why the horrible second disc. But I don't want to call it horrible, but it definitely throws people off for sure, especially if you're not aware of it. If you're aware of it going in, it's a much different experience. But Nick, what do you got for us?
Square had announced that Xenogears may have not come out in the United States due to the sensitive religious issues. The English translation of Xenogears was the first instance of an English localization team working directly with the Square developers. It was the first major project the Square translator, Richard Honeywood.
Hmm.
According to Honeywood, translating the game was a particularly difficult task due to it containing numerous scientific concepts and philosophies. He came into contact with it because its previously assigned translator quit or asked for a reassignment due to its challenges. In a later interview, Honeywood stated that the biggest issue with the religious references and or was were the religious references and the concept at the end of killing God. So which is weird because literally Final Fantasy VII
Yeah.
goes into that exact territory. So I mean, I
Right.
guess maybe this essentially opened the way for that then.
I don't think so, but I think it had to do with just Honeywood being. I think he's Mormon, so he's devout Mormon, so he's very close to you know his religion, and so I really you really never know with these kinds of things. I especially with the as a translator, I guess you have to look at it and say, well, you know, what are things that need to be changed due to sensitivity. Because you gotta games are weird in the sense of like you gotta kind of in a way try to please everybody. It's an impossibility, right? So you got to make, of course, massive compromises. So, and I think he did.
Um, but luckily, it didn't seem to change the game a whole lot, and it still ended up being pretty good.
Hmm.
But continuing on, which needed to be adjusted so that it remained faithful to the original premise while stepping around some of the content that might offend people. Honeywood may have also had a hand in the Japanese naming of Deus.
Hmm.
The staff were originally going to call him Yahweh,
You know.
and during his argument against it, said it's dangerous. The Japanese staff found it the similarity between Yahweh and Yabe amusing, and according to Honeywood, decided to call the boss Yabe in Japanese. However, in the final Japanese release of Xenogears, the boss is actually called Deus. Um, so either the name was changed at a later point, or Honeywood's account is inaccurate. Um, I mean, I guess I don't think we'll ever actually know because I mean, Claudian.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of like the Yahweh and changing Deus, which is the main. I guess you would call it a protagonist. Antagonist is the main one. It's the ultimate big baddie, but it's like more of a technology than an actual thing. But anyways, yeah. So Square Enix, I know, right? Square Enix. What we're talking about Square in 1998. What? Well, in 2008, they in fact released the game on the PSN network, and in North America, in 2011 they released it, which is how I have it on my PS3, and got to replay it again. It was great. It was like phenomenal. Like you don't have to worry about messed up broken discs or any scratches or any weird problems like that would come with these discs were notorious
I mean, you could
for just
literally
being
look at them weird and
terrible.
they would be scratched.
Yeah. Yeah, they used the famous for those who've never even looked at a PlayStation 1 disc, it is the famous black back disc. So yeah, I think you can still purchase the game today. I don't quote me on that, but if you have a PS3, I'm pretty sure you could go to like classics on the options, and then like I think it's PS1 Classic or something, and find the game there. If not, they probably taken it off. I know some time ago there was a big cry out for keeping a lot of these games on the network, and they were taking them off originally. So, but yeah, so we're going to we we're going to do something we're gonna actually jump to characters. We don't really want to like effectively get too much into the story. We don't want to. We want to keep it sort of light for you guys. But if you guys do want to like find out way more about it, and especially like touch base with all of the religious, notations and everything, and really dive deep into this, there's a podcast called the State of the Arc podcast. I think it's like 21 episodes long. There's all about though they do all sorts of games, but they have a 21 episode one for just Xenogears. They range from like 2 hours to like an hour and a half. So if you have plenty of time and you really want to learn everything about this game, I would check them out. But yeah. So moving forward, we're going to talk about the characters. So you have the main protagonist, Faye, who is the classic, amnesia case story. You have Ellie, who is a Gebler soldier of Solaris. In fact, you first meet her, I believe, in like the Black Woods or something like that. And actually, here's for those who are in fact watching our show. Actually, this scene here is when you first meet her. She pull the gun on you. And then you have a Saitan, who's kind of like the old man, sort of like, the Gandalf, the Doc Brown from Back to the Future, and Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars. And you got Bart, who's also a very big character. He's a desert pirate, because we have desert pirates in this game. Because who doesn't love JRPGs without desert pirates? We have another character, like we have a actually very interesting one, Rico, who was like he's a demi-human, so he looks like a monster. It's pretty interesting.
Kind of reminds me of Blanca from
Yeah.
Street Fighter.
Yeah, it's funny because of everybody, he's probably like the most Final Fantasy looking character, I think. 'Cause he looks like a Final Fantasy, like
I feel like they all look
like
super
he looks like a
fine,
summons, actually, that they probably originally had early concepts for, but they're just like, oh, let's just keep this, like, and it almost looks like that, to me, that is. And there's so many different characters. It's a very heavy, very very heavy with characters. Your main antagonist really is a Graph. He does like probably one of the most boss moves I've ever seen. The second time you run into him, he's standing on a mountain, and he's standing on the shoulder of his gear, and there's like a big red moon, blood moon, like behind him, and he's like, "I'm here to kill God. That is my purpose." So that's pretty boss. I can't argue with that. That's ultimate. That's the ultimate for me. The really bizarre villain, the Emperor. He's just called the Emperor for most of the game, and he's like you kind of like find him in like this weird parallel world thing. Like all these paintings are flying through. It's really interesting, and essentially it's a very simple story in certain aspects of it. The boy who's kind of been orphaned, orphaned, but like not orphaned, but like he's just lost his memory. And
They just have a lot of '90s character tropes.
yeah, it's very tropey. It's got I don't know who I am, and thank you little village for somebody
taking care of me for so long.
He basically stumbles in there all bloodied up. There's no memory of who he is, and thank you for taking care of me for a year, and and then of course, Gibbler attacks, and he loses everything, and then he's got to like find out what's going on, and he gets very kind of gets put in a disposition of becoming the hero. Now, I'm gonna go a little beyond the game. I got a book here for those that are watching. I specifically brought it for this. So Joseph Campbell actually talks about this a lot. He was a study of he's an author. He studied mythologies and stuff, and he's primarily known for doing something called formulating something called the hero's journey. For those watching it on my camera here, this is what it looks like, and we'll probably get a snippet of it as well for those looking into it later. But yeah, he really follows that, I think, really more than anything, because he doesn't want to be the hero, and he's got kind of the wise person kind of guiding him through everything, and he kind of at a point he has to realize he's just gonna stick with his gear, Volta's, and yeah, like it follows all those like there's the whole father, who's my father trope and all that. It's very it deals with a lot of heavy elements like that. So Nick, I think we're gonna do the rating of this.
Yeah.
Let's do the rating.
All right. So moving on to our rating portion of the show. I give it a solid 8. I didn't get to play a whole lot of it, but from what I did get to play and from some of the videos that I've watched on it and all the stuff that I've got to learn, it definitely deserves an 8. It's not perfect, but the gears, just those. I mean, I absolutely love Gundam. I build the kits, obviously. For those of you who have seen me before, absolutely love those. The animation style, it takes me back.
Yeah.
That 90s animation, I don't care what anyone says, is absolutely beautiful. So yeah, definitely deserves an 8. In my opinion, it's worth a play if you haven't already. I'm sure there's plenty of places you can find it. The game itself, if you own a PlayStation, it's like $60. What was it?
No, on the PSN, it's PSN. I think it's going for like, if you can find it, if it's still on there, with like $20. But
I meant like an actual PlayStation.
Oh, actual PlayStation, it's going for like $200.
Oh, never mind. Maybe don't get it that way.
Yeah.
But if
you get a 9.8 Weta graded, there's one going right now for about $2,000. So if you got some cash to drop, you can always pick that up.
Well, it's a fantastic game. But I'm gonna, Claudia, why don't you give us your thoughts and tell us what you rate this?
Yeah. Now, I got a lot of nostalgia with this game. I had played it when I was much younger, and I played it more recently, and then it just happened to be that this was really the first time I was able to talk about it, and so I dived back into it a little bit. It is a very big game. It's got a lot of hours to it. So, but I still got to rate this at, like, you would expect a 10, but no, it's gonna be like a 9. I'm not too far from where Nick's at. The translation's terrible. There's just moments where you're just reading it, and it's not really, I guess, of course, not Honeywood's, not his fault at all or anything. So, and the second disc is kind of terrible. like in the sense of like it really busts the it really destroys kind of like the feel for the game. But I feel like really you're pretty much done with the game when you're I think you're done pretty much after disc one. But yeah, so I think with all its problems, I give it a much lower rating than like a 10. But yeah, 9, which is still phenomenal. It's a phenomenal game. Honestly, I recommend highly if you can get it to try it out. Um, and yeah, so you got an 8, and I'm doing it as a 9. And so yeah, and that will conclude this episode. So for those who are who still are sticking around to the end, I thank you. Please like, comment, and subscribe.
Follow us on Spotify if you haven't already, and thanks again for stopping by.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Have a wonderful time.